Welcome to the Rewards Master. Today, I'm going to take you on a tour of what has been one of my favorite lounges in the United States, if not the very best lounge, in my opinion, domestically, that's available through just holding a premium credit card, and that is the Dallas-Fort Worth Capital One Lounge. Now, as we go through this, I just recently went back to it for probably the last time for a while, and I'll tell you why that is. But I've been to this lounge many, many times, and I wanted to tell you about it so it can perhaps help you decide whether the Capital One Venture X card is really right for you. So if you would hit the like and subscribe button, and let's examine it together. The Capital One Lounge at Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport is what we would generally call their flagship lounge. Capital One, a few years ago, came out with their own lounge network, and the very first one was at DFW. And it was kind of by itself for quite a long time until they finally opened up some in a few other places. However, Capital One still doesn't have what you'd call an extensive lounge network. So really, that one, the one in DC, the one in Denver, some of those are some of their primary clubs even to this day. So if you frequent through those airports, then these lounges can be a very, very good thing. However, if you don't go through an airport frequently that has a Capital One lounge, well, then you're stuck with just the priority pass access that comes on the Venture X card, which is not really a special benefit since so many other cards give priority pass. And if you're deep into the credit card game, like many of us are, then you probably have 4 or 5 priority pass memberships anyway. So the real benefit with the Capital One Venture X card is that it does give access to the Capital One lounges. Now, to briefly recap the Venture X card, Capital One's premium credit card, it's $395 a year, is the Capital One Venture X. It gives a $300 travel credit that's easy to use. Well, really, it's a coupon. You use it through their travel portal, and it takes $300 off of your first travel purchase of the year after you hit your card member anniversary. So it's a pretty good credit that offsets all but $95. And then on your anniversary every year, they give you 10,000 miles, which more than offsets the remaining $95. Because in my estimation, Capital One points are at least worth 2 to 3 cents each, if not more than that. So it's not a bad card. It's definitely a card that is a keeper in regard to being able to offset the annual fee. But then the real benefit of the card is it's what we would call a catch-all credit card because it has 2x earning on everything. Now, you can get some elevated earnings through their portal and all that, but for the most part, the real benefit is the 2x earning on everything. Now, when the card first came out, it gave unlimited lounge access to the primary card holder, to their clubs, also to priority pass lounges, and it gave that also to up to 4 free authorized users on the card. So you could add children, you could add a spouse, you could add a friend, whatever, and they were going to get access to the Capital One lounges, also access to priority pass lounges, and they were going to bring guests too. So it was an amazing, amazing lounge card where one paid card membership could theoretically get like 20 people into a lounge. It was really, really good. Well, it was too good. So the crowding got so bad in the Capital One lounges that they just completely changed it. And starting early next year, they are nerfing it down to where just the primary card member gets access to Capital One lounges and priority pass lounges and no guests at all. So if you want your authorized users to have access, you got to pay $125 a year for each of them that you want access to the lounges. So that's kind of the changes. That's where we're at with Capital One. So when I said in the intro that this is probably the last time I'm going to one for a while, it's because our Capital One Venture X is in Nona's name, and I'm an authorized user. So we're not going to pay that $125. I can just go right there close by to the Admirals Club, or I can go over to the Centurion Lounge, or I can go over to the Priority Pass Lounge. I think it's called the Club there at DFW in the D Terminal. So I have a lot of other lounge options, so I'm going to use those instead. So I wanted to go back through one last time. I was flying through DFW and I took some film just to talk about the lounge. Now, as I mentioned, the Capital One Lounge, when it first came out, was my very favorite lounge. I haven't been to it in almost a year, and I will say this time through was a little more disappointing. I remember the lounge having fantastic decor. It still does. I remember the lounge having comfortable seating. It still does. I remember the lounge having just a great feel about it. And it's still exactly the same way. Where I'm disappointed is when I first used to go to the Capital One Lounge, and I probably went 4 or 5 times in 2023, 2024, but it's just been in 2025 that I've kind of fallen off of it. And I can tell you, my memory of the food in the Capital One Lounge was absolutely outstanding. It was great food. They do it different than a lot of their competitors. You know, if you go into a Centurion Lounge, generally you're going to have like a big buffet spread, and that's true in a lot of other lounges as well. Capital One does it different. They have stations. And each of these stations has a different food item in small little plates or skillets. And it's kind of like a tapas kind of approach, you know, the small meals or the small plates. And as you can pick those up, I remember they were really good before. I remember there were some short ribs before that were outstanding. There were other just unique dishes. They try to do things that are kind of special from around the world. And I've been there in the past, both at lunch and dinner and also at breakfast, was always impressed every time. I will say, when I went through this last weekend, I was not as impressed with the food. Now, the menu lineup was just, it sounded on the surface all right, but taste-wise, they had gone down, at least in my opinion, from where they used to be. There were things, some of the stations were things like biscuits, and then there were like a fruit salad type of thing. There was potatoes with a hollandaise sauce. There was a station that had breakfast sandwiches, like biscuit sandwiches. I think they actually were on English muffins, but breakfast sandwiches. One was just an egg and cheese, and the other was what they called a burnt ends with egg and cheese. I tried that. It was okay. I mean, it was basically pulled pork that wasn't certainly the best pulled pork I'd ever had with egg and cheese. It was a fair sandwich, really not much better. In fact, I'd take a McGriddle at McDonald's over what I had there in the lounge. And that is disappointing because in the past, I would never have said any fast food would ever be tastier than anything in the Capital One Lounge. So to me, it's gone down in its food quality. It also had some things like, it had like a cornbread dish with a special butter that went with it. They had, of course, fruit of every kind, whole fruit like bananas and apples and oranges, all of that, several kinds of juices. And then they had a French toast dish. And of all of that, it was all right. I mean, it was fine to pop in and get a breakfast, just like you do at a Priority Pass lounge or one of the airline specific type of lounges like an Admirals Club or a United Club. But it was not the food quality that I remember when I used to name unequivocally, without any reservation, the Capital One Lounge the very, very best domestic lounge in the United States. So in my opinion, it made me much less disappointed that I'm losing access to the Capital One Lounge starting next year because it just seems to have fallen off from where it used to be. Now, when we talk about the decor of the lounge, as I said, it's got several seating areas. You can overlook the gates and plane watch if you want to. It's got a big bar area. It's got a kind of a craft soda station. So rather than getting Pepsi or Coke or something like that, they have their own craft sodas. That's kind of neat. The bathrooms in the Capital One Lounge are kind of, I suppose it depends on your circumstance, but they're all individual bathrooms, which is nice for privacy purposes, but it kind of makes the lines very long. I mean, there weren't a lot of people. We were there pretty early in the morning. There weren't a lot of people there. And so even then I had to wait in line for, 3 or 4 or 5 people to get in to use the restroom real quick. They also have, and one of the things that's been a big selling point of them is the Capital One Lounge has a grab and go station, which is a place where you can take sandwiches and you can grab different things that they prepared and take it to the plane with you. Well, they still had the station, but they didn't have any food on it. And maybe it's because we were there early and they just hadn't stocked it. But it seems to me like if that's one of your big selling points, you would want that stocked the moment you open in the morning. And they did not have that. So overall, what do I think of the Capital One Lounge? I think it's fine. I used to would have put it in the S tier for domestic, not around the world, but for domestic travel. But now I'd say it's down around the B tier, if I had to be honest, from this last visit. It's just not what it used to be. And it would match. I'd be just as happy going over just a few gates down to the Admirals Club Lounge at DFW, which is a very nice lounge. So that's what I think about the Capital One lounges today. And actually, I'm happy I went through the lounge because it's going to make me far less disappointed that I'm losing my Capital One lounge access because of the changes they've made to the Venture X card. Well, let me know what you think of the lounge. Have you been to one of their lounges yet? Am I wrong? Was maybe I just hit an off day. Maybe they haven't gone downhill as much as it seemed like to me, or maybe they have. If you go through Capital One lounges a lot, let me know in the comments down below. Also, consider my channel membership. It's $2.99 a month. You can cancel anytime you like. And I'd love to be able to share with you some of my members-only videos. Also, I release my videos early. So all of those benefits are for channel members. Doesn't cost you more than $2.99. You can cancel anytime you want. Also, I have some referral links down below to the camera equipment I use. Also, different cards that you can use my referral links, support the channel. I'll get a small commission, no cost to you. I appreciate that very much. Please hit the like and subscribe button, and I will see you here next time.